Welcome back to the Tacomaholic channel, everybody. As you can tell, today I'm in an abandoned, empty parking lot where my Tacoma belongs, according to some of you. But don't worry, today I actually have a legitimate reason for being here, and that is making sure those expensive, ridiculous mud terrain tires you just have to have will last as long as possible when driving around on the street for 99.9% of the time. So let's get started.
You have chosen wisely.
And the only item you'll need to do today's video to make sure those tires last as long as possible is some chalk.
Shocked?
Confused.
And yes, I bought this chalk on Amazon, so now my shopping recommendations are all screwed up, giving me all kinds of stuff for like teaching supplies, so curious to see how long that is going to last. Alright guys, today we will be doing what is called the chalk test. I didn't create this, it's been done a ton of times before. I always sort of just picked a happy medium for the PSI for my oversized mud terrain tires that are practically worthless on the street, but you gotta admit, they look pretty cool. So today I will be doing the chalk test to determine the correct PSI to make sure my tires wear evenly, because if you did not know, if you're shopping around for mud terrain tires, even all-terrain tires, they definitely don't last as long as regular street tires, which makes sense given the aggressive tread pattern. I think usually the average seems to be like if you can get 25,000 miles out of a set of aggressive mud terrain tires, count yourself lucky. So obviously they are a little expensive, even though the 35s I have are less expensive than the 33s I was running. Go figure that. I want to make sure they last as long as possible. So with the chalk test, all I'm going to be doing is covering a plane across the tire perpendicular to the sidewall, I guess. You'll see in just a second. I'm going to do both the front and the rear on one side. Of course, you can do all four corners if you really want to get it dialed in. And literally, I'm going to drive straight down the parking lot and straight back, no turning, just to see how the chalk wore off on that short, like, couple 100-yard trip. Ideally, you want even wear. If it's wearing too far on the outside, that means you are overinflated and you want to let out some of the air. If it's wearing on the inside, you are underinflated and you want to add some air. I think I said that correctly. It might have been backwards. And yes, I am currently parked like a douche in the parking lot, sort of off to the side, just because I have a perfect straight path right here. I was thinking about just going in between the parking spots right there, but this is a little longer so I can get a more accurate reading. So I'm literally going to mark the tires on the driver's side, drive straight down to the trees right there, and then put it in reverse and come straight back. Okay guys, and before we get started, remember, if you are letting air out of your tires, causing more of the tread to rest on the pavement to get that even tread wear, which is the whole purpose of this video, just remember that the more rubber you actually have on the road, you're going to get a little more rolling resistance, so that will put a hit on your miles per gallon, which I know, modified Tacomas, not the best MPGs to start, but it should be minimal since you're really only increasing your footprint by like fractions of an inch, I would guess, even if you're letting out like, say, 10 PSI. So that would be sort of the extreme circumstance, but just be aware of that. It might, you may or may not notice. If you do, comment below. Okay, so I'm going to get a baseline and check my tires. I usually keep all of my tires at around 32 to 33 PSI, all four corners. And if you just aren't interested in doing this process and you just want to get like a good rule of thumb for your tires for off-road mud terrain tires, somewhere between 30 and 35 is probably going to be around the optimal range. Of course, you can really use a chalk test to dial that into the exact PSI. And again, you want to make sure you do each corner because the weight distribution in the Tacoma is, of course, not equal. There's usually a ton more weight on the driver's side, hence the infamous taco lean. So like I said, I keep my tires at about 32.5, 33, something like that. You know, it varies. And I checked it at my house, and it was 32.5 on this side. This is just a couple miles away, but of course, heated up just a little bit, so I'm going to redo it just to get another baseline before I do the test. And I will be using my sweet pressure gauge from Power Tank. You can grab one of these by itself. You don't have to get the whole Power Tank system if you want. I'll put a link for this down in the description below. I love this thing, super useful. It's all digital, very accurate. Just hit the on button, put the chuck, if that's what this end piece is called. I never know what this is called, so comment below if I got that wrong. Put the chuck on the valve stem, and I get a quick digital reading. So 33.7, so about a pound higher because of the, I guess, the air getting heated up in the tire from the short drive over here. So go ahead and check the front and get that baseline. And I'm glad I checked because the front tires actually heated up more. They were both at 32.5 at my house. The rear jumped up to 33.5, 33.7. The front is at 34.5. I assume because the front tires are actively turning and maybe because of the added weight, a little more heat generated, friction, whatever, physics, science, all that stuff. So about 2 pounds higher for the front tire driver's side and 1 pound for the back. Okay, I am actually holding a piece of chalk. I can't remember the last time I did this. It has to be in the mid to maybe early 90s, something like that. Can you believe chalk is still around? So all you're gonna do is just take it sort of flat against the tread, and I'm just gonna mark off an area. And of course with the mud terrain, there's like less actual contact with the ground because of the aggressive tread, so you can just sort of color up the islands right here. And I guess I'll just do a section that's maybe like the distance of 2 of these little tread islands. Okay, so there is the rear and the front. And with both the rear and the front tire marked, I'm going to go ahead and start the truck, drive all the way down, come right back, and it looks like I have a witness now. Okay guys, so that was just one trip, and I know the chalk's sort of hidden here by the shadow from the truck, but for the front tire, I mean, you can't see the back obviously, but right here on the edge, hopefully the sun's not blocking it, there's just like a quarter to maybe a half inch of chalk right there at the edge of the tread and on the other side. So for the front tires, again, they were at 32.5 cold temperature, and then they warmed up to 34.5. So for the front tires, that seems like they are totally fine at 32.5. And again, this is just for my setup, the weight I'm carrying, the specific tire, all that stuff. Your application may vary, so just do this test as often as you need. For the rear tire, it's close. And again, this is just one trip up and down. At least you can see it right there. Maybe not on the right side because of the shadow, but maybe about 1.5 inches of chalk on the both inner and outer edge of the tire right there. So if I maybe just let out a pound or two,
God bless you.
And I'll do that just to check. I'm going to let out a pound or two of PSI from the rear tire, do the trip again, and then see what I get. Since the front tire is good, go ahead and put my valve stem cover back on. I bought these, I just wanted to show you real quick. I bought these like 2 or 3 years ago, a long time ago. I think before I even had the bronze rims. And they were initially black, and I guess from the UV damage they turned bronze. And how cool is that? They actually like match just about perfectly with my bronze Stealth F5s. And go ahead and let out the air. I'll get a quick reading. So it's reading 33.5, so obviously didn't heat up that much. And I'll just let a little bit out. There's just a button right there on the right side, you can do that. And I took the rear tire down from 33.5 down to 32, so let's try this again. I'm going to re-chalk it minus the 1.5 of PSI. And when you guys are doing this, make sure you don't turn the truck off until you are parked and you can actually see where the chalk was. Mine's very at the bottom there. It's actually no difference doing that, so I'll go ahead and take it down to 30 PSI for the rear and redo it. Okay guys, I did not film that last run, but you know what they say, third time's a charm. 30 PSI in the rear tire for my setup is ideal for that even wear, and 32.5 in the front. All right guys, so I have my tiles dialed in. Did I just say tiles? Tires dialed in. It's amazing the crap that runs through your head when you're trying to speak a coherent sentence and film something at the same time. So I have my tires dialed in, everything good to go. Hopefully squeeze, I don't know, 5,000 extra miles out of these tires, given an even tread wear so I don't have to replace them prematurely, because you know they ain't cheap. If you use the chalk test yourself and you sort of dial in your tiles, go ahead and tires. If you guys use the chalk test on your Tacoma, your mud terrain tires, and you dial it in, let me know what your starting points were and then what you dialed it down to get that even chalk wear. As always, thank you so much for supporting the channel by watching this video. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. I gotta get a tan.